Well, as you may or may not know, the other day I got my MOT, which was a bit of a surprise. And yeah, an adventure, because I ran out of fuel on the way there the day before, because I wanted to get there the day before because it was going to be raining the next day. And got there the day before, halfway down the road ran out of fuel, didn't realise how much fuel the car's using. And I called up Veronica, she came to rescue me. Oh, no light, no light. And some people out of the blue just turned up and offered to tow me to Whitney. So that's what we did. Towed it all the way to Whitney, 6 or 7 miles, and 6 or 7 miles I should say. Filled it up, brought it back, parked it up in the garage for the MOT, which I didn't know would still be open. And next morning, 8:15, I had my sleepless night at MOT time, and yeah, it was a success. So I've been driving it around since then, and last weekend we went to the Blenheim Palace show, car show, and it was great fun. Had a lot of effect on people, as you might imagine. But I worked out my fuel consumption afterwards, having filled it up at Whitney and then driven there and driven back here and then filled it up at Whitney again. And it worked out to be 3.78 miles to the gallon. And Veronica said when she's driving behind me she can smell masses and masses of propane coming out the back. So, today I'm going to try and conclude what the problem is. And I've got a few theories, but first off I'll show you what I've done so far. So I've done a compression test, and those are the results. So this is the front engine, and this is the back engine. Look at my filthy finger. So the back engine, the 4 litre, is looking pretty good. Front engine, 1 cylinder is reasonable, the rest are very poor really. So I'm hoping that's down to valve shims, as in the valve clearances are wrong, they're all tight and the valves are leaking. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a leak down test. And I've hooked out all my old testing gubbins. There's my slightly more modern tester, there's my archaic 1960s tester, but it's got a really good leak down tester on it. So the first thing to do is going to be to I'll pick the worst cylinder on my test and stick a pipe on there, bring it up to top dead centre first, put a pipe on there and see what its leak down figure is, and I might be able to hear it coming out the inlet or out the exhaust, and that'll let me know whether it's piston, inlet or exhaust valves. The other thing I concluded is it's oiling up like a bastard, and the plugs oil up, and then the propane, which isn't like fuel, it's a dry fuel, can't wash the plug clean, so it then misfires from then on. So the plugs are coming out quite black and oily on some cylinders. So I think I'm going to have to do the valve guide oil seals, which there's 48 of, and I think I found out that these engines, these early XJ40 engines, had no seals on the exhaust guides at all. Which explained why when I had the exhaust off, when I first started the car up, you could actually see oil running down the back of the valve stem. So 48 seals, hopefully without taking the heads off. You can do it apparently by pressurising the cylinder and doing it that way, but yeah, that's something to look forward to. Meanwhile, I'll do this leak down test and I'll film that. Ta-ta! Alrighty, so here's one of my testers, which is the oscilloscope part. I've turned off the pump, so we're just reading that screen. Here's my old tester, which I love. And here's the percentage of cylinder leakage gauge, set at 0 like what it ought to be. And in fact, if I just pop that down there for a second, plonk that in there, you can hear this leaking, and you can see that's reading 100, and if I put my finger over it, it reads 0, and my finger over it reads 100. So that's how it works. Now I just have to stick this end in the plug hole, put it on top dead centre, and see what appalling leakage we've got. Right, that's plugged into there, ready to test. However, I've got to find top dead centre, so you put a little whistle thing on there, and in theory, if I put it in gear and push it forwards, that's going to whistle when we get to top dead centre, or stop whistling. Let's see what happens. 5th, missing. Oh. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm missing the other way. One go. Well, I reckon that should be it. Let's have a little look down there with a torch just to see if that worked. Yes! Okay, the whistle works. Now we can see whether it's leaking out the inlet or the exhaust or past the rings. And the good thing is, because I've got such an open inlet, I'll be able to hear it. Let's plug her in. Let's see what we get. So I'm looking on this scale here. A bit more. Okay. Got that working, calibrated on 0, that looks slightly past because of the angle of the camera, and I've poked it on top dead centre as we know. We're going to plug it in and see what we got. Okie dokie, 10, 12, 14, just over 15%. Got a bit of leakage at the plug, so I'm going to try and fix that and see if we get that a bit lower. See this little thing here, this little rubber ring, it's not sealing very well, so I'll put a little bloblet of grease on there, see if that helps. Grease one side of it, and grease the other side. I know you can't see very well, but I like it with all the lights on the gauges showing because it just looks more spooky. Plugging it in. Yeah. Oh, that's a bit better. So we've got what? 12%. Well, it could be worse. It's not coming out the inlet, it's coming out the breather. You can't hear it hissing out the inlet at all. What you can do is, whilst it's pressurised, you can stick your finger over the breather from the crankcase and just hold it there for a while and take it off. Hopefully this will work. So that's built up pressure because that's leaking past the rings. So basically what I reckon is we've got an engine that is old, probably got a bit of rust in the bores before I used it, and piston rings and pistons and bores aren't in perfect condition. However, it's only done 70 miles since it was resuscitated from the death camp, so I think probably just leave the valves as they are. I was going to do the shims, but I don't think I've got to now, and see if the bores bed in a bit. I mean, one of the cylinders on that engine was reading 145, the rest are sort of 110s, 120s, whereas on that engine you've got sort of 170s across the board. So I know the history of that engine because I took it out of the car, I should dictate correctly, and this one's unknown, although I do know it could be a TWR Jaguar engine from its engine part number, which is spooky. So there you go. Next thing to do, now we've done that, we can sort of go, right, we know the valve condition, we know the seals leak, so I theoretically have to do those. But we've also got, let's turn on a bit of lighting, we've also got the maldistribution problem. So my analysis of why it's running so badly is, it's got not enough spark to fire an oily spark plug, because the plug's getting oily from the valve guide oil seals. So I've got one multi-spark ignition box hopefully being fixed by my friend Andy, and one I got cheap off eBay, which may or may not work. And that's one part of the cure. The other part of the cure is making sure all 12 cylinders are running on the same mixture. Now at the moment I can take a plug out of number 4 and it'll be clean and running cleanly, and other plugs that look super rich. So I think I'm going to take you off the doofy here. I think that what we've got going on is with these manifolds I've made. Let's zoom out. Zoom in. Here we go. So we've got propane in here at sort of atmospheric pressure, and then as the air rushes down the inlet, as I showed you in that other video, it sucks the propane up the pipes. Now if you look at the difference in shape of these pipes and the number of bends, it's logical to assume that maybe some cylinders are getting a bit more than others. What this means is I really need to put a separate tap. Instead of just one tap here, which adjusts the flow to the globe, I need to put a separate tap in each pipe, which is a bit of a bastard because I really like those pipes and I don't want to cut them about and put a great big wodgy tap into, you know, in the middle of them. So I'm wondering if I can drill in the side of this aluminium stud, put a thread in it and put a bolt in the side of that as my adapter, or my adjuster I should say, on each of them, because there's a fair podge of thread showing, so there's a bit of meat there, and just do that on all of them. But then I've got to work out how do you know which cylinders are running rich, which cylinders are running lean, because at the end of the exhaust all those 12 cylinders, well 6 per manifold, 6 cylinders have all mixed together and it could be reading perfectly good, a perfectly good mixture. I can't speak today at all. But it could be that, you know, that cylinder's running lean, that's rich, that's lean, that's rich, that's too rich to even fire, so that's making it seem like it's lean, and vice versa, and so on. So, the only thing I can think of to do is you either get 6 oxygen sensors and 6 wideband drivers off the budget, and I don't want to cut up holes in my nice headers, or I put a thermocouple on the outside of each header and measure the temperature the engine's running at on each cylinder and log it, and then adjust my little screws until all 6 cylinders, and at least 4 until all 6 cylinders are running at the same temperature. Then I can raise and lower the main feed and hopefully they'll all stay the same, and I can keep logging the temperatures. I haven't got 12 data loggers, but I have got something that'll log 8, so I could use that to log 6 cylinders. I found thermocouples on eBay for 99p, won't be here for a while I think, but you know, I think that's my best option. I think what's actually happening is we've got possibly not the best ignition timing. That's something else I'm going to map out and check, because these distributors I converted from anti-clockwise to clockwise, and maybe I've got something slightly wrong there. Getting all the cylinders to run the same, getting them all to run. I mean, at the moment I think I started it up last night and there was definitely 2 on that engine that definitely were a bit cold compared to the rest. Back one was okay. And making sure I'm burning all the propane I'm using. So multi-spark ignition, taps in every pipe, data log the exhaust temperatures, check the ignition curve, and see where we go from there. I really don't want to be paying 80 pence a mile for fuel, and I'm hoping this car, with its gearing and being as it should be pretty efficient Pentroof full valve chambers, I reckon should be able to do 25-ish to the gallon, which would make a big difference. At the moment my 10-gallon fuel tank range is 40 miles. I can go 20 miles somewhere and 20 miles back, and that's my lot. So there you go. So my next thing to do, which I might show on this video, is me trying to data log the exhaust temperatures as the car is now, so we can see how bad they are for evenness. Ta-ta! Okie dokie, on our long voyage of diagnosticness, I have now done all the cylinders, because I decided just one wasn't good enough. All the plugs out, all the cylinders done, and these are the results. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this. Here we go. So the 3.8, which bizarrely has the lowest compression on the compression test compared to the other engine, 16, 21, 14, 14, 15, 12. Not too horrible, not brilliant, that 21. However, the 4 litre, which had the good compression pressures on the cranking, had much worse on 3 cylinders. 39% leak down, 10, 10, both are good. 38% on leak down, 12, 34. Now I'm guessing maybe it was parked up with, what is it, number 7? So that's number 1. 7 on this car because it's got 12 cylinders, but number 1 on that engine. So number 1, number 4 and number 6. I'm wondering if it was parked up with those down the bores with the valves open. So those bores got rusted, and the good cylinders, 2, 3, 5, those cylinders had the valves shut, so the bores stayed in good condition. Just a thought. I know they won't all have had the valves shut, but they could have had the piston at the top of the bore. So that's a bit disappointing, to be honest. However, maybe a bit of blatting around will bed those in. And why this one should have low compression but good leak down, and in fact the highest compression has got the highest leak down. Maybe a cam lobe problem, maybe a cam timing difference between this engine and that one. I know these engines had the cam timing changed halfway through their life to smooth the tick over out, and the way they changed it was to spread the lobe centres so the valves would have more overlap. But that would also mean, sorry, less overlap. So that would also mean the inlet valve was closing later. So that gives less compression. So maybe this one's had its valve timing changed. Any road up. That's that. There's nothing massively broken. It all seems to be piston ring blow by. Couldn't hear anything out of the valves on the exhaust or the inlets. So bedding in and see how it goes. So the next thing to do is check the ignition curve. So I'm going to get Veronica in here to put a foot on the throttle with it running, and I can strobe the ignition curve. So basically I'm going to make a graph like so, and we'll have RPM along the bottom. So it's 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000, 6000, although we won't go that high. Once it's at 3 it should stay stable. And up the side we'll have degrees of advance. So what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're looking for 30. So if I go 3 per slot, so 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33. That should be groovy. And I'll take the vacuum advance off and plot that bad boy out and show you what the result is. I'm looking for something like 27, 28 degrees maximum and a static tick over sort of 15 degrees ish. I've put 14 degrees into the distributor when I designed them, advance. So we'll see if I've got that slightly right or if it's all a load of poo. Back in a while. Epoxy thing. Come on, off you come. Good. Plug-ins i elen. I haven't got my little sexy aluminium covers on here because I'm taking the plugs in and out so blooming often. I might as well leave them off for an analysis session. Okay, so now I've got to plug on my coils again. Boofty boof. Neutral, good. Right, I'm going to get my strobe, hook my strobe up. Oh, I've got to take that little bit of floor out. I've got to take that little bit of floor down there out, not that you can see it, because that covers up the timing mark for the back engine. Well, that was fun. Whoa. Recording? Yes, we are. I had Veronica revving the car in these different steps, as I showed you before, blah blah blah. We only went up to 3,000 because that's when things levelling off should do anyway. And interestingly, the zeros are the 4 litre and the X's are the 3.2. So they're both starting off at 7 degrees advance at 650 to 800-ish. But then the 3.2 is going to 1500 before it starts advancing, and it just keeps on going, which isn't good. It's supposed to be 22. Whereas the 4 litre comes up to 1500 and then holds steady, which is what I want. Now it's advancing from 7 to 15, so that's a total of 8 degrees. So 8 degrees on top of my base, which was going to be 15, would be 23. So that's not advancing enough. That should be advancing 14, it's only advancing 8. And this one is advancing from 7 up to 25, which is 7 from 25, 18. So that's advancing 3 degrees more than I want it to. So I think I've got to revisit the whole distributor, bob weight, balance weight, how much advance it's going to achieve on both of them. So that's really interesting. What else was interesting was, on one engine the timing was, originally I adjusted them both to 7, but originally the timing was at about 20 on the back engine and about 5 degrees after top dead centre on the front engine. So they've moved about in some way. So I should be able to effect quite an improvement by getting this right. I'm going to take the distributors apart and have a look inside and see if my blobs of weld have come off. That's it. Cheerio. Good morning. Mission today is to take the distributors out and change the advance curve and the total advance. The back engine was 10 degrees less than I wanted. The front engine was 3 degrees more than I wanted. No, sorry, back engine was, where were we, 15, 5, about 5 to 8 degrees out. So, what I've done is, there's one distributor in situ. There's a hole where the other distributor used to live, and I've pulled that out, and here it is dans le vis. So I'm going to hoik it apart and I'll show you the innards and you can see how it all works, because that's really interesting, I'm sure. Bye. Alrighty, now we're looking inside the workings of the distributor. It spins around like a good one, and there's these little weights in here which can fly out and change the position of this part, this part, relative to that part which is driven by the engine. So as this changes position in relation to that one, it changes the amount of advance you've got. Now, let's see if I can hold this under my chin. I'm not sure this will show. And then you can see those weights flying out as I do that. That's what the centrifugal force does. And these little springs govern how far they fly out at a certain rev. And how can I show this? Where are we? Yeah. This little gap here, can you see that? That little gap from there to that post, that governs how much it can actually advance by in total. So I've got to make that gap bigger by a millimetre or two, I've got to work it out, and I've got to make one of these springs a bit heavier so it doesn't advance quite so quickly. And then with the other distributor, I've got to add a little bit of metal to there so it advances a little bit less, and I've got to lighten its springs up a little bit so it advances sooner in the rev range. This is also I can run on LPG with a advance curve that I deem to be just about right. So I can take this apart, file a bit of metal off there after I've worked out how much it's got to be, and then change these springs if I can find some more which are a touch heavier, or just one that's a touch heavier. And that's what I'm doing today. So I shall carry on like that. Back again. Here's my distributor mechanism. As you can see, I've blobbed a little bit of weld on there, and that's just adjusted that gap so that what I do is I put a degree disc on here, and then I wedge a file in that slot, and I can see how many degrees that's turning. And I've got that at 6.5. I was aiming for 7, so that's fine. Excuse me, that's going to give me 13 to 14 degrees of, or 13 degrees of movement on the car, crankshaft timing. And yeah, so with 15 static, 13 is getting me 28, which with propane you tend to run more static at low end and less at the top end. So I'm happy with that. I've done the other distributor, so I'm just going to put this one back together again, time it up, and see how that bad boy runs. Ciao ciao. Back again. Right, I've done my distributors, and now I'm going to fire it up. But what else I've done is, I've hooked up these super duper jury-rigged temperature probes. Too long, too short, because that's what I've got. And I've hooked them up to my computer, and I'm data logging the temperatures on the 4 exhausts. I've only got 4 probes at the moment. So I thought this might be interesting on a first startup. So that's coming next. We're getting these readings of exhaust temperatures. And the green one and the purple one, I've just moved the pickups, which are too long. I've just moved them so the tips are on the hot exhaust. These ones are sort of half and half, so I'll bring those so they're sort of tips on there as well. Just like that. Let's see what that does. Ah, the red ones and blue ones are looking less, showing less temperature now. Hello. Right, my mission today, which I did choose to accept, is to stick the back engine on the oscilloscope and record, film, make a note of the waveform on the primary and secondary circuits, and then swap the leads over on the pickup to the GM 4-pin module and see if the waveform changes pattern. Let's just get this on the center. Put it on the base, and I'll put it in the middle. And I'll put it in the base. There we go. Let's see what happens. This test is with the pickup terminals swapped round from the way I had them when I first built the distributor. If it runs at all. But it didn't seem to like that at all. So I think I'll put it back how it was and study the waveforms I've recorded. Okay, normal wiring, and this is on raster. So we want bottom line, I think. See what happens. A lot of noise here. That's every cylinder on top of each other. That's the cylinders, one on top, one above each other. And that's them all in a row. Okay, that's the kV scale, set on 25 kV, so we're running about 10 kV there, second circuit. That's how it's on primary.